It's funny too because I am going to be talking to someone else tomorrow who always has a V haptic vest on, and
Mhm.
I just want to keep seeing like more and more people have these vests on because it's like a lot of fun to see people enjoying haptics in different ways.
Mhm.
Um, but I do want to give a little TLDR before we start. I don't typically do these; it's a little more of a cold open. But for people who don't know who you are, give the audience just a little TLDR about your interest. VR haptics, everything that you'd want them to know about for this conversation coming.
Yeah, for sure. Just let me know. I'll jump right in.
Oh, you're good to go. We're live.
Oh, sweet. Okay, cool. So my name is Ashley Huffman. Most people in the VR space know me as Chick Tech, and I'm a huge fan of the both VR and haptic space. My full-time role is working at Titan Haptics, where I work with strategic partners. Titan Haptics is a haptic actuator development company. So we create haptic technology, and we work with badass companies to put our tech inside of their gaming controllers, smartphones, all that fun stuff. And haptics is a huge interest space of mine. I'm the founder of the All Things Haptics newsletter, so folks also know me from there, where I try to share all the amazing things happening in the haptic space. So V Haptics comes up constantly because I love what those guys are working on. There's always some really cool update, whether it's a company update or their dev community making cool stuff. But I try to cover patents, news, just all the fun things, events, and that way people get educated in the space because haptics is a relatively new area and there's still so much to learn and there's not too many experts. So just try to like amp it up as much as possible. And then for anyone else, they may know me from the Haptics Club, where we've got a group of haptics company geeks from Unity, from Interhaptics, Sense Glove, and we basically come together and interview folks in the space. And we talk to everyone from academia to game developers, and we just talk about all the cool stuff that's happening in the world and how haptics has changed and where we see the haptics, the future of haptics going. So that's kind of the one-on-one about me.
I'm really glad we were able to hook up finally because I know we had a few issues. I listened to most of the podcast episodes like over the past couple days. Alden Dynamics was your last one that I really enjoyed. They did a Twitter space, I thought, as well, maybe like a month ago. That was just like an amazing space to listen to and learned a lot because on the outside, like looking at haptics, it's a really interesting on a VR side and even more interesting outside of VR. And I think the beauty of haptics right now, like my first introduction was V Haptics, and it was on Sorrento on the Oculus Quest, right when they were launching that. It's an interesting thing because right now I think one thing that it leverages really well is the power of your imagination. And I know that sounds weird, but I gotta admit, put this on, the old version, really skeptical because I'm aware it's vibrations, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there's something truly wonderful and unique of when you buy into a situation in VR and when you immerse yourself. You have to try, like you really have to try at first. But then when it hits you, it's very shocking. Like I don't know why we all want to get shot in VR. Like that's the first thing I want to do. Like I don't. Why are we so infatuated with getting shot? But we are. But when I got shot, I thought I was gonna just be like, whatever. But I was into the game, and there's a video out there somewhere, and it threw me back.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is, but what have you seen from people who hear about haptics and VR? Why are they wanting to experience that? Have you seen any commonalities?
It's a really great question. I think the funny part about haptics in VR and haptics actually in a lot of different technologies is that the technology was first and the content is second. So unlike things like radio where music kind of like everyone comes up, there's different artists, there's a lot of different kind of musicians and like that's really the first part of content, and then radios and stereos and then Walkmans and then all those things kind of come because it's so popular. Whereas haptics, it's haptic actuators are in all these different technologies, but no one really knows of any. There's very few like great pieces of content that are super memorable. Like I like to ask people like, oh, who's your favorite haptics artist? And like I haven't ever heard of an answer. No one has an answer, at least yet. So I think that's one of the kind of interesting things about the space is we're still just seeing the development of new content. And the things that are interesting are that there are companies like Haptics coming up with consumer grade products that people can actually, it's accessible. Whereas typically in the industry, it's academia has really cool stuff, but it's things that you'll never get to see and play with unless you're in the industry or you're in these kind of like closed door events. And then for other people, it's just, I think just having just the access to the Oculus Quest 2 has just allowed more people to access it and have a feel of it. Like even with simple games like Synth Riders, for example, like does an amazing job at utilizing the fact that haptics are rather simple in nature. They just buzz, a simple buzz, but they utilize it in such a way that feels enchanting because it goes along with the beat. Like you can feel whether you're right or wrong because of the haptics. So I think it's those kind of moments that are starting to pique people's interest because it's tangible things that you can actually play with or feel because it's an accessible unit and games that are accessible. It's $20 here versus, $1,000, $2,000, $5,000.
I'm really glad you brought that up too, because that was what I was also thinking about. It's not about the haptic experience. Like, I don't want haptics for the sake of haptics, but one thing that I find are the most memorable VR moments are things that are specifically designed to use the medium the right way. Like I use this example a lot, but like Population 1 on fist bumping for a friend. It is a specific way to interact that you would only be able to do in virtual reality, and because of that, it feels more immersive. It feels great. And I'm glad I didn't know Synth Riders actually had haptic support, but the way you said that is nice. The sound that it's deliberate. And I was actually going to ask you that on what types of. We're jumping around a little bit, and I like that. For VR specifically, on a consumer grade product early on, like haptics, what ways do you find would be the most beneficial to add those in that are not just haptics for the sake of haptics, but are beneficial, that make the niche of VR really specifically useful and amazing?
It's a good question as well. I think it's really tough for designers of haptics because you're limited by the technology itself and what the technology can actually achieve. And so utilizing that in enchanting ways is like you have to be very strategic, because sometimes you can replicate the feeling of a weapon, but you can't replicate the feeling of, say, touching a surface. Like those are very different feelings. But when the output of the haptic controller is buzz buzz and buzz buzz, you're quite limited. So I think it's understanding the limitations of the technology itself, where the frequency plays best, and then trying to determine kind of like how that fits in with your game. So it's like maybe it's important for the person to understand like surfaces, because being able to touch a surface and know that you can't put your hand through it both visually and tactily really helps build immersion, because it makes you feel like you're in that space. So it's utilizing those moments crossed with like the limitations of the actual actuator technology are things that you just have to like keep in mind. And I think the other kind of nuance of that is like how you develop is different for everyone. Some people prefer to just like code it in, so you code specific haptic feelings and it's mapped, and when that motion activity happens, then that feeling pops up. There are other ways to do it, like audio to haptics. And so when you pull the audio from your game, you feel the haptics, which is like a really kind of like simple way to translate feelings into a game using the game sound itself. But there are also like nuances to that as well, where it's like maybe you don't want to feel people talking in the background, because that kills the immersion experience as well. Like talking, a narration in the game, you'd feel that. So it's like I feel the buzzing, the shooting of the guns, but I also feel the narrator talking in the background. So there's like a lot of that's why haptics is hard. There's a lot of different things that you need to consider when you're making it, that of like choices and trade-offs that you need to make. And I think it's just really thinking about it from a high level of like what your game is trying to accomplish, and what are those key activities that are really you're trying to focus the user on, and all the other things that maybe don't translate well, just avoid altogether, because you know that like there's certain things that happen even physically in a game that just kill immersion for a user. Like say I can pick up this, but I can't pick up that. Like if like you touch certain objects and you feel a haptic reaction, but other objects you can't, like you're kind of like tricking the user in a way that like it's hard for them to comprehend, and you're like pulling the plug out of the matrix where they're like, okay, I'm no longer in this. I just like it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I think like the gold standard, like I think Half-Life Alyx was deliberate in its use of haptics. So it has the haptics of just what the controller is, but the design in the game that I noticed is you can touch everything, but more specifically, let's say there's a ledge, like I have a ledge on my desk. If you put your hand over that in the game, your in-game hand warps around the ledge. and it's very abrupt, sudden one. And the design of the game gives you the illusion of an impact, and then the controller vibrating slightly completes that illusion. So it doesn't have any crazy haptics other than what's in the controller, but the game seemed very well designed to not only incorporate the in-game movement but the haptics simultaneously, that gave you a complete feel of what you're doing. For people who are searching for games like that, that maybe are off the beaten path than Half-Life Alyx, which is every conversation, do you have any recommendations for games doing these good designs that utilize what we have to work within the controllers?
I'm trying to think of the games that I play most often. So there are games like, one of my favorites is Real VR Fishing, that has a really interesting use of haptics because they use it to complement what fishing is supposed to feel like the casting feeling, which kind of creates a bit of a weight to the line, the tugging of when a fish is at the end of your line and your bobber is bobbing. So those are really interesting use cases. They're really simple, but they're done in a way that just makes it feel really realistic. Other ones like Walkabout VR, any kind of like the VR putting games, just the feeling of being able to tap the ball, because if you don't have like a weight to the controller itself, it doesn't change based on what you're holding. At the very least, it gives you that feeling of like you're providing force, and that's giving you a bit of feedback. So it gives you the kind of the idea that there is something happening there. Other ones that I always recommend, and one of the reasons why I wanted to interview Alden Dynamics CEO is Waltz of the Wizard. For me, that's a huge unlock. That was a game that just transported me into a place that made me feel like an all-powerful wizard because of the haptics feeling. So I had the fireball, it was building up in my hands, and I just felt like, I wrecked the entire castle, as one does when they have all powerful fireballs.
Yes.
But it's those small moments and those kind of games that it's nothing crazy. It's not buzzing constantly, to your point, like bad haptics can really kill an experience because it's just over-exaggerated. Nothing does that in real life. And so it's those kind of like small nuances that I love. And I would say like anyone who's got cool haptics in their game, like please let me know and I will buy your game and like let me play around, because that gets me super hyped. Like I love these kind of, like Half-Life Alyx to me was like the best game and will probably remain the best game for a long time because of those the way that they were able to capture just the entire world and use haptics in a way that's not overbearing, not super buzzy, but just kind of like maybe.
It kept it simple. It didn't go over the top. It utilized the game they both played off each other rather than one just being an add-on. I think of that like when I play with the V-Haptics Vest in, say, Pavlov. It's definitely an add-on. I definitely know it's not meant to be there, because when gunfire is coming at me, but I really kind of feel the rumble everywhere. It's just mass sensory overload. It's fun, but it's tiring kind of quickly. When it comes to my opinion, I think haptics going to be very slow build over the course of time as everyone learns how to use it and more tech comes out. The thing that I would hope speeds it up the most, and why I was so bought in when I saw the new controllers from Sony, is I really hope to keep seeing really good haptics outside of VR for traditional gaming, because the more consumers see the value add of haptics, those kind of triggers that the depth triggers, they're beautiful. Anyone who's never used, like, go to a GameStop if they have a demo, just test them. It'll change your perception of what a traditional shooter can accomplish in immersion. And the more people that entertain these kind of concepts and experience them outside of VR, they're only going to want to have that as a standard option forward. Are you hearing words of maybe any VR hardware manufacturers working on different types of haptic triggers on their controllers?
We work with the company who's kind of behind that. We recently announced a partnership with Immersion, so they've got a lot of really interesting technologies under the realm. In terms of like people working on cool stuff, I'm in an actuator company and we work with these types of companies, so I can't say anything. But I think what's really exciting is we're seeing, because of companies like Sony who put such an emphasis on haptics, they promote it wildly. They spend millions and millions of dollars to talk about it. These are the kind of reasons why other companies are starting to get excited about the space. And I think that's what we need to see is, for smaller companies, it's actually really hard to justify spending time to develop in haptics, because it's like, if you're on the Sony platform, you have to develop haptics for Sony's platform. And then if you're on the Xbox platform, you have to develop for Xbox, because they're two different actuator technologies inside. technically 3. So I think that's what makes it very difficult as a decision. But I think because of Sony, because of even Apple and their like super awesome actuators in their phones, like it's, you know, industry leading stuff that's pushing the boundaries. And I think it just takes people talking about it to help other companies justify that time spent, because I think at this point, like, you've got an amazing game and it like visually looks amazing. It doesn't have to look ultra realistic, that's not the point, but it just is engaging and feels cool. And if you can include something like haptics tailored slightly to like embrace the fact that this cool, say, weapon you've got in your game shouldn't feel like a shotgun. It's got to feel like a laser pulse, and at the end of it, it's got to feel like a bit of a recoil before it hits this other kind of feeling like a zap. Like, you know, there are these mechanisms that need to be brought from someone's creative head into the real world, and haptics helps accentuate these kind of original ideas and turns it from just like a kind of like a boring experience into like the sci-fi feeling, and I really embrace that kind of thing, and I love how creative people can get with it. So I think it's, if we can help people justify it because they understand the value of it, then, you know, that there's so much potential for creativity there that's going to just blow people's minds. Just look at the PlayStation controller. It's crazy what that thing can do.
It's just, you know, the more people start using tech and certain things and get accustomed, like, for example, like when I first got my first cell phone, I'm putting on custom ringtones. There's a lot of noises. I'm having fun. But then as we start getting more tech, like text messages and push notifications, you're kind of the a-hole in the room if you have noises on 24/7, right? Like, and now it's customary where it's like everyone doesn't have, no one has ringers on. It's all haptics on your phone, to the point where if I'm using my phone and I don't have some type of tactile feedback on a button press or something, it feels broken to me. Like, I don't, it's repulsive almost. And now if you don't have decent haptics in your phone, it's a bad product. And eventually, that's why I'm so happy when Sony put so much money and effort into their haptic controllers, because now I think anyone who's experienced that, it's mandatory that stays and gets better. And that's going to translate into every other segment of the industry as well. So, like, I'm with you fully. And I think it's also, on a little bit of a tangent, it's also hard for developers in VR to support this, because I see like games where a game launches and tons of people own these products that are fairly expensive. I don't know what haptics are. I think it's like $300-$400, and they're not supporting every game. So every new game that you're enjoying, you're going to want to ask, hey, haptic support. But that creates a little bit of mixed messaging, because if they didn't design their game with that in mind, they can't guarantee that that's a value add. It could end up being something great, or this haptic support could really just turn someone off from the experience. How are you finding, or if you're speaking, I know you speak with different developer groups, are any of these ones who didn't have that in mind and are getting pressed to add support for haptics? Are you seeing or hearing any difficulties, or what are their thought process that you might be hearing?
Yeah, there's definitely difficulties along the way. Just some of the other things we spoke about, just the implementation itself. I think for anyone who's like into haptics or developing haptics, it's such a niche area still that there are like very few schools that focus on it. And if you go to a school for it, it's like very specific, and it's outside of really like game design. So it's like you have to make a concerted effort to really arm yourself with an understanding of how to do it really well. So in terms of like just thinking of some of the priorities, but let me like step back for a second, because I think like there are people doing something about it, which is really cool. So there's something called the Haptics Industry Forum, and it's a group of people that are coming together, a bunch of haptics companies, including ours, who are trying to put together standards so that there's like a reference point for people that are developing with haptics. Because right now it's like the Wild West. Like, everyone does it a different way. Everyone's got their own rules. Everyone uses their own tools, and like the learning that you need to do to get from A to actually implementing is like, it's kind of offensive. Like, no one wants to read white papers, Eric. Like, you know, 60 white papers to have a fundamental understanding is that just kind of sucks. So the Haptics Industry Forum's putting together these standards, so at least there's a benchmark that people can use. So it's like, what should the haptics experience be like, and how do we make it simpler for people to implement, which is super cool. And then for like our own company and what we're doing is we have a similar mindset that it shouldn't be difficult. It should be able to be something that's you could work easily with partners who develop tools, whether you can code or you don't code, and just make it as simple as possible. It doesn't need to be rocket science. Not that I have a problem with rocket science, but like it shouldn't be crazy. You shouldn't be enraged at every turn, just trying to like make a cool haptic effect.
Because if you are, it's going to translate over to the experience of the end user. Like, well, what is the phrase? Like, what you put in is what's coming out, basically. If you put in anger and you put in frustration,
yes,
most likely someone's going to pick up on that on the end user side. Going outside of gaming, that's still gaming adjacent, but on the haptics that we've been speaking about, when it comes to hand tracking, and some of the solutions that are out there or being worked on, before we get into the actual solutions that maybe you can speak about, what are your thoughts on haptics and hand tracking? Is it a necessity? Is it the holy grail value add, or is it really something that's just going to be worked on over time?
I think it's going to be a necessity. And the reason why I think so is like we currently use controllers as a mechanism to communicate with computers. It's our interface. When we remove that from it, now it removes a level of interaction of like the computer can communicate back with us. And we see this with everything, even in cars where, you remove screens. So what do? You put in haptics so that the screen can communicate back with you that you're making inputs. So I think when it comes to like AR and VR and the need for haptics, I think it's going to need to happen so that we can confirm whether we've pressed a button, so that we can continue to have some kind of immersive experience with, if it's a game, if it's a table that we're sitting at. I think there's just a lot left on the plate for that immersive creativity that would just kind of die. And I don't think we would, as like humans who are so used to these things, just like you mentioned, like if my phone doesn't vibrate and there's a call, it's like something's broken there. And I think it's the same thing. If we're in VR, AR, and we couldn't feel what we're doing, it doesn't communicate back to us, then it's like a broken experience. So I think it's an expectation that we'll have as users, but we probably just don't know it yet because no one's really doing anything currently. People are working on it. Everyone's talking about it. Facebook's talking about it. There's some implementations that are in the works, but there's just nothing tangible that you can, at least to my knowledge, that you can throw money at and play with.
Yeah.
You can build it on your own.
If my phone rings and it does not vibrate and I miss that call, like I'm borderline offended. I'm borderline like disgusted and being like, how dare you, phone? How dare you?
How dare you? Yeah. Do your job.
I've seen like some haptic solution, well, not prototypes and concept art. It seems like one of the ones that I see the most common is a wrist device, which seems practical. I make a lot of comments about friction in VR. Like this, it works very well now. I think out of all the haptics, or out of all the VR accessories that I really have, I think the Haptics Vest is one of the easiest. Yes, I have to put it on, but the pairing and implementation is very smooth. And I've seen some other solutions like full gloves and bodysuits, which I have no experience with, so I'm speaking purely from just opinionated thoughts. But they seem like a hassle. They seem like I'm already sweating right now. They seem like weird things, the hard things to wash. But what kind of solutions do you think are going to be optimal or the most lucrative to work on?
That's a really great question. I think the ones that I'm seeing in academia are exactly the ones you're talking about. It's wrist, a glove, a body, or it's some kind of like tool instead of a controller. It's like a mechanism that you have. What will be the coolest? I think my vision is still a similar vision to like Ready Player One, where it's like a full kind of getup. But I think that's going to take a lot of time because of some of the limitations you're talking about. Like in VR, you tend to get sweaty, you need to be stretchy. So it's not a perfect solution. So it may be some kind of connected suit that kind of all works all together that maybe just isn't quite as overbearing and like a swimsuit kind of thing. But like, for me, I really believe that having haptics in a lot of different areas just makes sense for really completing that immersive feel, whether you're, in VR painting or you're being shot at by a bunch of robots. Like there's just a lot of opportunity to engage and to just like feel things. Like if you can't feel things in VR, like we're missing half the piece of the puzzle here. We've nailed visuals. But like I think we've done such a good job there. Audio is great. Audio is just gonna get better. But in terms of like being able to touch and feel and make it feel real, whatever that real is, it could be like Population 1, like real is whatever that war experience is. It could be like the Museum of Realities, like feeling someone's painting, so you can feel exactly what they want you to feel and as part of their exhibit. Like I think we're just missing half that puzzle. So I think it is going to take maybe in the future we'll have like embedded haptics, but before I get all like Elon Musk AI on you, like I just think it's going to be these different modules that you can use and play and exchange based on whatever experience you're going into.
Yeah, I really appreciate you mentioning how much we're missing out on. I think about this a lot, especially when I hear people say there's nothing to play or they beat this game quickly, all this stuff. I hear them, and I don't blame them a lot of times, because when we're missing so much, we're not understanding what could have been. And I think of a lot of games that, because we're missing out on all those things, because we either can't interact with many things just due to the limitations of development, and people have to release their games, they can't just work on it forever, or the limitations of haptic responses, feeling things. There's not a lot of incentives in some games to take your time from point A to point B. I mean, hell, putting aside locomotion sickness, teleporting in itself is missing out on quite a lot of opportunities from point A to B, which is a necessity to some people. So it's a value add that you can even teleport to some people. Yeah, exactly. The fact that teleportation needs to be in games, because that's going to allow many people to experience the game that couldn't otherwise. But there's a lot of things that just go against these games that, yes, maybe you beat this game in 4 hours, but if you didn't have motion sickness and could use stick locomotion, and you had haptic experiences that encouraged exploration and tactile feedback, what would that game have been? So I think as haptics and other solutions come out, even for comfort options, I think the replayability in games only goes up. I think games actually get more valuable that have come out already if they can implement that. That's just something that I really hope to see, because it really sucks to hear some people who pay $40 for a game and beat it in 4 hours and never go back. Like, we're missing out on the exploration of just surfaces and things like that. Surfaces, just like engaging with other characters in the game. Like, what do the surfaces feel like in this other world? Like, that in itself, there's so much that you could do there that would just make it even more enchanting and really get the user lost within that world that you've created for them. So yeah, that expression from that creative mindset into like what these objects that no one has ever seen before, what they feel like that's a whole new experience that could be enabled, but is just either not possible because of the existing technology, just can't do it, like physically can't do it, or it's someone just isn't able to take that time as a trade-off from updating certain elements of the game. So yeah, there's a lot of variables at play, but I'm right there with you of like, there's a lot of potential that and a lot of creative people that have amazing, crazy, insane, silly ideas that need to come to life, because it's like to get it out of their head and into the world so other people can experience it. And like that gets me super excited. So do you think the introduction of haptics would increase creativity on developers' parts? For example, I see like in VR, you could make anything you want. You can make the game anything you want. But I find the architecture and level design of a lot of games is fairly one-to-one to what I could envision IRL in some form or another. Do you think that is by design of just what is doable right now? Or do you think the introduction of haptics and these other things that would lead to different ways to experience a game, would that encourage developers to just throw the book of, hey, we can do anything, let's stop using the architecture of real life and see what we can do?
Literally praying that happens right now.
Okay.
Because I think because that would be a key unlock. Yeah, I think it's really tough to be a developer because it's like you're at the whim of oftentimes it's like a committee or a board, and you just have to do certain things to check the boxes to release the game, and I get that. But at the same time, yeah, I do think that by utilizing these new technologies, that it really just kind of opens up the gambit for potential, like how to use spatial within a game to change the way that the user like interacts and where they want to stand and who they engage with, and like there's even like a lot of really cool analytics that you can pull from these kind of things to help you understand like the benefit for you as a developer, like what's working and what's not. But I think
analytics could you pull on that? That's interesting.
Well, just thinking about like what the user's actually doing versus what you think they're going to be doing. I think with any new technology, it's like what you think someone's going to do with something is usually the exact opposite, and they end up using it a different way. They end up like not going down that path. They end up like standing half an hour at a wall, like, you know, playing with like leaves on a tree. Like there's just so much that maybe we just don't know because we just don't know. So you can't do anything about what you don't know. So I think there's a lot that we could probably do to just get more insights in that kind of world of like what people, if we just let people play a little bit, then it'll be an unlock for maybe like an aspect of your game that you didn't think was important. Like maybe the loading screen becomes this enchanting experience, and that is something that, you know, your game is known for, and then you can include those kind of elements throughout. So yeah, so many epic things that could happen.
Yeah, it's kind of like the architectural issue of like you can make the path like my college campus. You have the pathway, but then you see that grass that has that perfect patch of dirt that everyone decided was the path they rather would take, and you know some architect is like dying inside it because he spent forever making that, and people just said, nah, I'm going this way. And I like that thought too. Like I think that's why a lot of people like these open sandbox type games like Boneworks, where you literally all you see the content. Like I don't think I've actually ever seen any gameplay content from that people were playing the game. It's them doing whatever they want. And I'm sure when developers are watching that, that's immensely valuable information because you designed the game one way, they're using it a different. Maybe we should know why did they do it that way, and that's going to lead to even more better and better game designs. What ways is it tough? I don't know if this is a tough question or not, but when it comes to the haptics way of that, so like with Boneworks, I understand the level design, how they're doing tricks and what they're doing could give them immense ideas. But if they were to incorporate haptics into that and let them experiment, what ways do you think they would try to use that, like a user? What are ways that they could experiment with it?
I think it just encourages use. I think that's one of the interesting things about it, because it's like I'm imagining my first experience with Striker VR. So it's a partner of ours, and they sent us one of their blasters. And I just remember that very first moment of trying it and feeling the haptics, and it was kind of like a game changer for me, because I was immediately like, I didn't picture my office anymore. I pictured I was in like Terminator basically, and I was just some freaking badass, and I was just like literally in the middle of my office like, ah. So I think that's what it does. It just kind of like brings you to a different kind of place. And so I think for people that are creating these kind of like these different kind of guns, or these different kind of like any kind of different kind of weapons, shields, whatever it is, it just encourages use, because now you're making it more realistic and tangible, like something that you can pick up and play with. Just like how we love our phones, we love like playing with like mice and all these different kind of like pieces of tech. Like that's really what you're doing, is you're just making it more real. So it's like you're kind of making that connection between like this could be physical object that you're seeing into like tangible. You're making it more tangible. So I think there's something really special about that, and creating a relationship between the person playing and whatever you're building. It kind of builds a weird relationship.
With the current VR games that are out now, and the ones that you decide to play, just to pick your brain a little bit on, you know, I know you love that game, but what are like the top three, or you don't even have to list the top three, but what makes the games that are the most immersive to you the best? Like what is it that makes a one game to you the game only and the IRL world's gone, and the other games that you're 50-50, half in, half out?
I would say I'm definitely like I'm either like an open world type of person where I just want to like fiddle with all the things, play with all the things. So that's one of the things I like to do. And if the game doesn't allow me to fiddle with all the different objects, break things, then that's kind of kills the experience for me. I also love experiences where I'm like, it's about art and it's about like seeing what other people create. So I'd encourage other people to check those out as well, because I don't think a lot of people really take the time to go to those, because
you've mentioned it twice, just to give a shout out to the game. I think you talked like the Museum of what is it? The Museum of Other World?
Is it alternate realities? Oh man, I'm so bad at names.
I know. I almost want to get it now because I have it and I don't want to butcher it because it is. I'll make sure to put it in the video description, everybody.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much.
Because it is. It's a rotating museum. So it will constantly change. It also is multiplayer, so other people can join you in it, and you can not only just walk around, but your character can fly as well, so you can see all these works of art from different perspectives. You know, you can see a snow globe piece of art and click on it and go into the globe. You can go into these extravagant, like I don't know if they still have it, but there was like a fashion showcase that you could go to and be part of, and it was beautiful. Like the Museum of Otherworldly. Man, I wish I knew it by heart. It's an amazing game. But just to give that game, we've said it like twice, like alluded to. So I just wanted to give it its proper due right now because it is such an amazing experience.
Yep. Yeah, and there's like a few games like that where they're just focused solely on as like a platform for other people to showcase their creative works. And so that's just another area where I like to hang out, because it's like you get to be in someone else's mind and kind of like see their world from their own shoes. And it could be just like a crazy monster that they're like freaked out about and they create it as a way to like, you know, express it. Or it could just be like a beautiful dress that someone's created because it's like the dream dress that they've, you know, never get to have. So yeah, there's so much there that I love to see. It's like VR for me is even in just some of the indie games is just about like being able to hop inside of someone else's mind and see how they think and how they like what they're excited about. So that's one of the reasons why I'm just like constantly looking for new games. And for me, that's kind of the biggest one of the hurdles of the Quest 2 is like looking for free content is quite painful. But when I'm on like the Vive, I have like Vive port, like there's just so much meaty content and like things I would never try otherwise, because I wouldn't want to necessarily pay for like $30 for the experience, but I want to dabble in it. So that's one of the reasons why I just like fell in love with just Viveport, for being able to like try new things rather than having to like pick certain games, looking at reviews and worrying about, you know, locomotion and all that fun stuff.
I've asked this question to a few people, and I think because of your comment about Viveport, this might be applicable to you and very useful for viewers. Because you have on Viveport so many options, what is your process on picking which ones to try out? Because I think a lot of people have anxiety on trying a new VR game because there already is the friction of getting set up, and now you have to decide on this attempt I'm going to take to try something new, what's worth it? And everyone has different criteria for how they figure it out. How do you deliberate that process of trying something new? Now Viveport is a little less risk because you have so much options for a cost, but it's still your time. It's still time and effort. How do you delineate that and attempt to try something new?
Yeah, I try to test out all the latest games that everyone's kind of buzzing about, because I think that's a smart thing to do for anyone who's in the industry, is to know like what's the best of the best. And so you should always be trying to immerse yourself in the latest and greatest. But at the same time, I like to pick stuff that like makes no sense. There is one game that was actually like a tool, and it was meant for car designers, so you could like, you know, be immersed in how to design a car. And I'm like, there's no purpose for me to be in this, but I just wanted to test it anyways. So I think when you have the ability to download really anything, I would encourage you to download stuff that just doesn't make sense for you. And I think that's sometimes where you find the coolest experiences, or just the most engaging or enchanting things happen that you wouldn't expect. So it's like, don't stick to like, you like shooters, that's great, you know, play the shooters, but at the same time, like, download a game that's about like murder mystery, or about, it's like an anime or like a manga that even if you have zero interest in that space, like you should be just exploring, because that's where you'll maybe find the most interesting things. And for me, it has been. It's just like it's a gambit of stuff, and like when I stick to one particular area, like it does get stagnant, and that's where it's like for me in the Quest 2, like looking through the categories, it's like the same stuff pops up, and I don't feel like I've got a good idea of like what's maybe new or interesting. So it's that kind of trade-off between having to hunt for it versus like, just like literally like spinning a wheel and like,
I wish
give it a
so
go.
badly they would update that store to not only include a top list of what you would expect, and I believe they probably do it based off top sellers, things like that, because you got to make money, and it's a great store that leads to visibility. But it'd be nice to see like a user top 10 list, a rotating, constantly updated list of maybe in the past 30 days, what are users trying? Because there is really not a good way right now to see the top other than what is pushed to you. Even and it's not an Oculus specific thing. It's no different than Steam. I still think the top sellers on Steam VR are still the same ones from 2016-17. I don't blame them. It's hard, but it'd be nice to see a more user created list. But I really like your thought process on trying to see into the mind of the developer. It's a game like Jet Island is a game I nonstop talk about. Like, I don't know if you've ever played that, but that's a straight vision of this person who made that game, because for someone to put together this wide open, very weird and crude landscape, it's not by design, that's by his brain, and you're really exploring his thought process on what is fun to him or her, and it's a really unique experience that way. So thank you for sharing the way you go through games, because I've had other ones who just say like, literally, I've had the gambit of I go to the top list. I've had the gambit of I gave up. I really have no idea. I just picked something, and there's a wide range of happiness of finding new games to despair, and I hope to see better ways for people to figure out what works and what doesn't work for them. But yeah, go try stuff that's new. I don't want to like stare at my phone, but it's bugging me that I don't know the name of this game. Museum of Other World VR. I gotta know it. Museum of Other Realities. It would have bugged me to know it.
Absolutely. It's such a gem of a like visual, audible experience, and any kind of game that can take you out of your existing world, plant you in a different one, and just make you feel like you're somewhere else entirely. Like, I love those so much, and there are very few kind of games that for me kind of do that, so definitely recommend. Shout out to them.
Yes. We still have plenty of time if there's anything else you want to go into, but one thing I do like to at least bring up about this time to lead us towards the end is I like to end these on very positive future thinking notes. It's obviously, we see what's in development, we see what people are loving, we way more see what people are not liking, because for every one good review of something, you're going to get the vocal people who are unhappy. But everyone who I bring on has a really different perspective of what they're looking forward to, on what's making them happy and what's coming down the line of what they want to see. And I want to start there on, Ashley, regardless if you've seen it coming down the line or hope it's coming down the line, what's your future thinking mentality for anything XR that you think is going to be very value added to the end user and you're looking forward to personally?
Oh, I love that so much. I think I have such a eagerness and excitement for the space, because I get to see it from all these different areas, both in where I work and like even my newsletter, like collecting things. And so I have a huge, it's like such a huge ball of love that just continues to grow for the space, because I see that it's going in a direction of where it's becoming more cohesive. It's going to become easier for people to join. Whether it's from a user or developer perspective, which is really cool. So it's kind of like the industry kind of grew it's taking kind of its time. A lot of people are kind of crapping on it that it's there's like bad and good, and people are kind of mad about certain games, but that comes with anything, and that's just the way that everything works. There's like the light and the dark side, but I really feel like that what's going to happen with the industry is it's going to be a lot more embraced as kind of a whole, and that like the ideal world is that people can use it in all these different ways, from education, at old age homes, as in different countries who won't have a chance to experience the world. And so for me, like, I just see that vision so clearly that it's just kind of happening, and that that will also be unlocked with like really great haptics experiences that will enable people to feel, like literally feel what it's like to be in someone else's shoes, to educate and to learn in new ways that just feels like you're there. And that's going to be both scary because it's too real, but it's also going to be like opening your mind and your heart in ways that we just have never experienced before. And I think that whole industry excites me, from like, you know, consumer, medical, military, industrial, because of how it's going to enable both education and just this. I think it's the next kind of unlock of the human experience, because we can really understand, like, what is it like in Eric's head? What is it like in Ashley's head? What is that past experience, that tragedy or that celebration? What did it feel like? And I think that's kind of the direction we're headed. I don't give a crap about what people call it. I don't care about all the different terms. Like, it's just marketing. But I think at the core of it, it's all these different people working on all different things for the greater good of the community. And I think the VR community is one of the most special industries, areas to have existed, because of how connected, of how supportive it is. Like, I can't think of one that is really like this. Like, maybe the music industry is like the closest thing, but you know, yeah, I'm just so freaking excited for where it's gonna go, because I can like see it and feel it, and it's gonna just change how we all engage. And I think it's a matter of time before, you know, people embrace it and, you know, get to like experience what it's like to wear like a vest, and to feel what it's like to, you know, put something in your backpack and it feel realistic, to, you know, feel what it feels like to have rain on you when you're standing in a field, to feel what it's like to be in the middle of a movie scene or a music video. Like, there's so much stuff that is left just waiting to happen, waiting to be developed. And it's like, freaking anything is possible. Like, that's the craziest thing. Like, that's what probably excites me the most, is literally anything is freaking possible.
I've noticed lately, I think when I stopped making as much content, it helped me slow my brain down and play more VR. I really think it's a happiness generator, and not in the sense of like a dopamine rush of like something bombarding your visual cue or the game being fun, but it's encouraged me to act childlike. Like I did something for a few days, or like maybe like 6 or 7 days. I wanted to do it longer, but I think it was just losing its momentum on Twitter. But I was posting things that I was doing online that were making me happy, whether it was defusing a situation with a team killer, or just little things. And as I did it and shared it, it changed my experiences. Like I shared it once already, I think, maybe not here, but somewhere else, like jumping into a jungle level in Pavlov. And normally I would be competitive, and if a teammate came close to me who was a kid talking, I'd distance myself because they're going to give away my position. But I embraced it, and I was like, let's go, let's trek through this jungle. Like, bro, we got this, predators watching this. And I think it's encouraging us to use our imaginations, because it's forcing us into these atypical situations that we can't dream of, because like you said, we can do anything. And it's such a jarring experience that if you don't, it forces you to embrace it. And when you do, I'm feeling younger. Like I feel like a kid. I don't feel judged at pretending to do something IRL. Like, I know at school, like if they made you pretend to do like a skit in front of people, I didn't buy into that. Like, it was very jarring and unpleasant to me personally. That's just But in VR, you are that person, and it's expected of you almost to embody that person. If it's done right, it's expecting you to embody that, and because of that, all your fears go away, and you really can embrace the play. That's what you're doing. You're playing a character, and you're embracing that. And I think that's the beauty of it all. It's really making me younger at heart, and making me enjoy like randomness. And I think that's what kind of a beauty of everything you just said. It's unlike anything else. And people like you and all these people who talk about it and share content, that's what I hope gets shared. Not only just the visual, hey, this is what's going on, hey, here's a cool vest, here's a cool thing. Convey the emotion, because that's what you, I think, are really kind of alluding to in a lot of this, where it's the emotion behind it all. Unless I'm putting words in your mouth, which, correct me if I'm wrong, please.
Wasn't.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you really nailed that. It's the power of play, and it's like be able to transform into something else. Like I was playing Hyper Dash, and it was like I am a robot. Like I'm a freaking robot, and like my entire like mindset was transformed into that, and it like really does kind of catapult you into this other space where you can kind of be someone else or feel like something else. And yeah, there's something really powerful about that. And I love the fact that you kind of like have taken it in a like a different route. Instead of it being like hyper super competitive, it's like, what if I take the time to just like embrace the situation and help someone, or just try to have a connection with this person? Like it could go either way. And a lot of the times for me, it's turned into this like insane like heart-to-heart situation where it's like, this person I've never talked to before, probably will never again because we're just strangers like fishing or something, but we've just had this amazing bonding experience about whether it's VR or something that's happened in real life, and it just it catapults you into like such an interesting like community. Just I love the opportunity for engagement and new ways to just have fun with other people and play is like, it's insane. I love that so much. That's a really big part of it.
It's the beauty of it all. I don't think there's probably any better way to wrap this up than that type of discussion. That's kind of the beauty of it all. Any final words, Ashley, before we end this?
I would just say that if you are curious about VR, you're curious about just exploring the space, like I would encourage you to talk with people about it and to learn more about it. I know it can be cost prohibitive. A lot of these things are just kind of expensive, but I think it doesn't stop you from learning and finding ways to kind of explore it and just kind of get started. And I think it's the same for things like haptics, where it's like there's a lot of really cool stuff out there that's kind of cost prohibitive, but I'd say just explore it, get to know it, because I think this is an area that's you're just going to see explode as more content comes out and people are able to really embrace new technologies, or just are able to take the time to build out cool experiences. So I think it would just be, I'm always here for questions for people that want help or just want to like jam about haptics, of course, because that's my happy place. But I just like encourage people to just like have an open mind, just like you mentioned, and stay curious about it, because it's the more you are able to just kind of like take a step back and not care too much about what people think, and just explore a little bit of like what's going on with the developers, what some of like the new indie folks are doing, what some of the artistic things are happening. There's a lot of different things happening that are just a lot of fun to get to know, so you can have an idea that this space is bigger than it seems, and there's a lot happening that maybe will help unlock your creativity, or like if you're into like certain areas, like there's just something that's going to spark even more of that imagination and passion. And I would just encourage people to just take the time to do that, because go is great, but you also need time to play, just like you said.
And eventually you'll be able to literally stop in VR and smell the roses. Eventually.
Yes, eventually. Yeah, eventually.
For everyone listening, I'm going to put everything Ashley Huffman related down in the video description. Every podcast, every link, everything will be down there so you can catch her and hear even more interesting things. I will say some of the people that she had on her podcast. Haptics go from like kindergarten level to expert real quick, and you're going to learn quite a bit. Like the people she brings on, you don't realize how complicated haptics are until you start listening. So it's really good stuff. If this chat is a little too long, we will be clipping it as well onto the Eric for President Clips channel, so you can hear the best parts in a little bit more tangible way. So that will be in the pinned comment and video description. But that is going to be it for today. Ashley, thank you very much for the wonderful discussion.
Thank you so much. I'm such a huge fan of you and your finesse, and I encourage you to continue to ask deep questions and to and just continue being yourself at this, because it's amazing, and I just love your interviews. You're the best. You're the best.
Thank you. As always, everyone, we'll see you next time, Space Cowboys. Peace.